Now, we've been asking viewers to put their questions to UKIP today about their policies and what they would do if they got into government. People have been tweeting and sending in their questions using the hashtag BBC Ask This. And Christian Fraser has been looking at your tweets, so let's get him now in our campaign hub. Christian.
Yes, thank you very much, Simon. I'm pleased to say that we've been joined by the Deputy Chair of UKIP, Suzanne Evans, who's looking remarkably fresh-faced for someone who had to write the party's manifesto, but she is very suitably qualified to answer your questions, so let's dive straight into them. This is a question that has come on social media, Suzanne, from Eddie. Explain how it's worth voting for you, UKIP, when we live in a Conservative safe seat. So this is really a question that boils down to the splitting the vote on the right.
Okay.
If you vote for UKIP, you might let in Labour.
Well, I think if you vote for UKIP, you might just get UKIP. I say there's no such thing as a safe seat, and we've seen that repeatedly over the by-elections that we've had. So the by-election in Hayward and Middleton, safe Labour stronghold. What happened? We only lost that by 600 votes. And I think it's a truism now that if you vote Conservative, north of Birmingham, the chances are then you'll be letting Labour in. If you're Conservative and you vote UKIP, then you might just get a UKIP parliamentary MP instead. But I believe strongly that you should vote for who you believe in. I'm really not a fan of tactical voting, and I think it takes the voters for mugs, really. Vote who you believe in, not least because one of the things we'll be campaigning for over the next 5 years is a change to the voting system. We want a system where you can vote for an individual who you think will do the job, and then some kind of a top-up list to make sure that every vote really does count. So the more UKIP votes we can get across the country, the more I think we can lobby hard for a change in the system.
I was up in Hayward and Middleton last year talking to your candidate up there. There was a bit of frustration that you didn't throw more at it because perhaps you didn't think you could take a seat off Labour. Has that changed, that strategy changed this time?
I think what happened is obviously we had Douglas Carswell on the same day who defected to UKIP, and we had to get him back in. And we simply don't have the resources of the bigger parties. They've got far more money to throw at things than we have. And I think that we did that without being able to match them in terms of resources. Just shows how well we can do.
OK, moving on. Let's have a look at this next one. If I can bring it up. There we go. It comes from James. Why is Mr Farage under the impression he can keep the EU trade agreements without EU membership?
It's not an impression. We know jolly well that we can. There are over 60 countries that trade with the European Union that aren't in the European Union. We actually in Britain do far more trade with the USA, but we haven't had to become the 51st state of the US in order to do that. There are even, if you look at the top 10 countries that the EU imports from, they don't have any kind of trade agreement with the EU at all. So we're talking about America, we're talking about Russia, China, India, Brazil. You don't need to be in political union in order to trade with the European Union. And if we left, we'd take back our seat at the World Trade Organization, which means we have much more bargaining power. We can make our own trade deals again. And crucially, once we get that seat back on the World Trade Organization, the EU has no choice but to trade with us. It can't not.
But one of the common arguments with what you just set out there comes from Philip. Why do you want to have a Norwegian-style arrangement with the single market? The UK will simply lose out. And there are people in Norway who say it's not all sweetness and light being on the outside.
No, that's right, but we don't have much influence inside the European Union at the moment. We might have done when it was first formed and we first joined back in 1973. We had a higher vote share. Now, as more countries have joined and it's got bigger, our vote share has fallen. So I think in the EU Parliament we only have 9%, and that's not just UKIP MEPs, that's all British MEPs. In the Council of Ministers, I think our vote share is even smaller still. So those people that say we'll lose influence, we don't have much at the moment. You know, we're the world's 5th largest economy. We're the 7th largest manufacturing nation, the world's 4th largest exporter. We have influence outside.
OK. This one from Louise Shaw. Do you have a plan ready to implement if backing out of the EU doesn't work or doesn't benefit the economy? I mean, you've been doing the sums in your manifesto. Yes, you can put a figure on what it costs us to pull out, but you don't know what kind of jobs are going to be lost.
Well, I dispute that any jobs will be lost. There's this myth that 3 million jobs will go if we leave the European Union, and I'd really like to put that one to bed. It comes from a specific report which said if we left the European Union, very few jobs would be at risk. It said there are, I think, 2.5 million jobs directly linked to trade in the EU and about another 500,000 indirectly linked. But that report made it crystal clear that the jobs were safe because, again, the jobs depend on trade, not EU membership. And the author of that report, because the sort of people that want to stay in the EU tried to spin it, and the author of the report actually used the words pure Goebbels for what he was talking about.
But would you say that maybe in the short term there could be an effect on the UK economy?
There might be, and I think what would be more damaging actually is the scaremongering from big businesses who have everything to gain by staying in the European Union at the expense of smaller businesses. They can handle the burden of regulation. We've been launching our small business policy today. Small businesses really come out of it very, very badly on the whole. And I think, as I say, back at the World Trade Organization, we can open our market globally to the rest of the world, and I think we'll thrive.
Okay. Would UKIP support a constitutional overhaul with an elected head of state and an elected second chamber in Parliament, the House of Lords?
Gosh, I'm not sure we have a party position on this, to be honest. My personal opinion, and I'll give you, it's got to be a personal opinion, is that I quite like the House of Lords as it is, personally. I think it's too big, and I really don't like the political interference. But I think to have that sort of stopgap second chamber, in a sense being one step removed from politics, is quite good for democracy. But it's too big at the moment, and there is too much political influence.
Do you like the French system, a president with a prime minister elected?
No, not particularly. Not because I don't like the French. I love the French, but I just don't like the idea. I think the way we've got it is right. We just want more power in Westminster and take it back from Brussels.
Okay. I don't think the questions come from this fella, but we'll move on. What would UKIP do to resolve the immigrant situation in Calais? I've been there myself.
Yeah.
They opened last month the first accommodation centre,
Yes.
permanent accommodation centre since Sangatte. We get a lot of stick from the mayor in Calais that Britain doesn't do enough. What would you do about it?
Yeah, I think, when Sangatte 2, as we call it, reopened again, it was a really disappointing day, because I remember Sangatte closing and we all breathed a sigh of relief. It's the open borders situation, isn't it? This EU insistence on the free movement of people, which makes it so much easier. And actually, as you know, UKIP's policy is we want to have an Australian-style points-based system to control immigration. And I think if we bring that in, that sends a very strong message to the rest of the world that you come to Britain when you're invited, if you like, and you've made a sensible application. I think that will obviously definitely resolve the crisis.
Well, they'll still come if we pull out of the European Union.
But then we also have our benefits system. We say you won't be able to claim any benefits in Britain until you've been here and paid tax and national insurance for 5 years. Again, that will act as a huge disincentive. But that said, we are in UKIP fully committed to making sure that we sign up and continue our relationship to the United Nations Convention on Refugees.
But just a word, I mean, some of these people are asylum seekers.
Of course.
And then there is a situation we're seeing in the Mediterranean at the moment. What's the party's policy on that? Because it can't be just build the walls and keep them out.
No, of course not. No, and as I was saying, we have to fulfil our commitments to refugees, and there are rules about refugees and who you take, and UKIP was absolutely committed to fulfilling our obligations under the UN Convention.
Okay. And get rid of him. Keeps coming into shot. If UKIP isn't a racist party, why are so many racists and bigots attracted to UKIP? Does that worry UKIP? We were looking actually at the share of your vote. 40% of it comes from the Conservatives, but there is a bit of it that comes from the BNP.
Yeah, well, I think that's true in any party. We don't allow anyone that's been in the BNP to join UKIP or in the National Front or the EDL or any other kind of extreme racist group like that. We simply won't have them. And if we find that people have lied to us, we kick them out. If people make racist comments, we kick them out. I wish I could say the same for the other parties, because I can't, because there are people in the Labour Party who I think used to be, who are councillors, who used to be BNP members, as I understand it. This question comes up a lot, obviously, so it's nice to be able to address it. I actually keep a tally of racist, homophobic, criminal, fraudulent activity in the other parties that the media tends, unfortunately, not to report. And my tally so far, just this year, is 291.
Okay.
So we're not alone with having problems, but we do try and deal with them.
Before I let you go, I just want you to comment on our poll of polls. I got some stick yesterday, I do from time to time, about what I say is happening with the polls. I'm going to just move that to the last 6 months. And I said, is this a trend developing? So we've got the high point of UKIP over here. This is around Clacton, Rochester and Strood, the high point up near 20%. And now we're down at 13%. If it is a trend, it's a weak one, but it's downward.
OK, well, the first thing I think is in the last 7 days we've gone up in the polls. Every single polling company that has done a poll has shown UKIP on the rise. I think there's two things going on here. I think our manifesto launch was a great success, and people are looking at our policies and they're liking what they see. And if you actually talk to people on the streets and you say, right, this is a policy idea, what do you think? They love it. So first thing, look at UKIP's policies, and that will make a difference to the polls. Secondly, not all the polls prompt for UKIP. They ask you if you're going to vote Labour, Conservative or Lib Dem. So you have to be quite a brave person to say, well, actually, I'm going to vote UKIP. So we talk about shy UKIP, and we do actually believe there are a lot of voters out there who are very supportive but aren't necessarily coming forward. But as I say, certainly in the last 7 days, we've gone up as much as 3 points in the poll.
OK, and just looking at that, it's interesting that the Conservatives and Labour back again neck and neck. So not a collapse in your vote that the Conservatives would be hoping for.
No, that's the other thing about the UKIP vote. Once you've made the decision to leave the other parties and come to UKIP, you stay with us. It feels like home and you're happy to be there. OK. Suzanne Evans, Deputy Chair of UKIP, Pleasure.
thanks for coming in to answer the viewers' questions. If you want to send your questions, do